The encounter, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the quiet city below. People were going about their normal routines, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The peaceful world they knew was about to be ripped apart by an enemy they never saw coming in the skies above. Massive ships hovered silently, their dark, metallic surfaces gleaming in the fading light. These ships were not from Earth. They were the harbingers of destruction, sent by a powerful alien race known as the Jartok. For centuries, the Jartok had conquered world after world, crushing every race they encountered. They had come to Earth with one goal in mind: to take it for themselves. The Jartok believed they were the most powerful beings in the universe. They had conquered countless planets, defeated armies much stronger than Earth's, and enslaved species that once ruled their own worlds. They thought the humans of Earth would be no different, just another weak, defenseless species waiting to be dominated. But they were wrong. In the heart of the city, a man named Alex stood looking up at the sky, his face hard with determination. He was just an ordinary human, no special powers or extraordinary abilities. He had no advanced technology or superhuman strength, but he had something the Jartok didn't expect: a fierce will to protect his world. Alex knew the danger the aliens posed. He had seen the ships arriving in the sky, and he had seen the fear in the eyes of the people around him. The streets were empty now, everyone running to hide, to protect themselves from the unknown threat above. But Alex couldn't run. He wouldn't. He had a responsibility to protect the people he loved, even if it meant risking his life. He had prepared for this day for years. He was part of a secret group of humans who had been training in the shadows, learning how to fight, how to survive, and most importantly, how to resist the Jartok. This group had discovered something the aliens didn't know: humans had more strength in their hearts than they could ever understand. They had an unbreakable spirit, a will to fight, to survive, no matter the odds. As the first Jartok troops descended from the ships, they landed in the center of the city. They were towering figures, their dark armor shining under the light of the setting sun. They were terrifying Cytalian warriors with weapons capable of destroying entire cities in seconds. Their leader, a towering figure named Jartok, stepped forward, surveying the city with disdain. "We take this planet now." Jartok's voice boomed through the loudspeakers attached to his armor. "Humans will submit, or they will die." The forces advanced, their weapons charging with energy. They believed the humans would crumble in fear, like all the others before them, but they were wrong. Alex watched from the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew it was time. It was time to show the Jartok that they had underestimated humanity. He pulled out a small device from his belt and pressed a button. Hidden underground, miles away from the city, a massive power core hummed to life. The device Alex had activated was a weapon that could turn the tide of battle. But it wasn't ready yet. It needed time to power up, and that time was quickly running out. As the Jartok forces advanced, Alex turned and ran. He sprinted through the empty streets, ignoring the screams of people hiding in their homes. He knew what had to be done. He was going to lead the fight, to give humanity a chance. The sky above was filled with the sound of alien ships hovering and weapons charging. Alex's heart raced, but he didn't slow down. He couldn't. He reached the outskirts of the city, where his fellow resistance fighters were waiting. They were ready. They had trained for this day, and now it was here. As Alex reached the resistance base, he gave a brief nod to his comrades. "We fight back. We're not letting them take our world." The group of fighters, all ordinary people like Alex, nodded back, their faces filled with resolve. They were ready to make their stand. In the distance, the first Jartok warriors were closing in. Their footsteps echoed through the city, heavy and menacing. But Alex and his team weren't afraid. They had their weapon, their courage, and their belief in each other. It was time for the humans to show the Jartok what they were made of. As the alien forces drew closer, Alex's hand tightened around his weapon. The battle was about to begin. The Jartok thought they could easily conquer Earth. They had no idea what they were up against, and that, Alex realized, was their biggest mistake. Humans weren't weak. They were stronger than anything the Jartok had ever faced. This was just the beginning. The fight for Earth had started, and no one was going down without a fight. The secret weapon the Jartok had landed, and the city was a battlefield. The alien forces had begun their assault, their weapons tearing through buildings, their monstrous roars echoing across the streets. But humanity's resistance was not without purpose. Alex, along with his group of fighters, had prepared for this day. They knew it was not just about defending their homes, but about fighting for their very existence. As the first wave of aliens surged forward, Alex's heart pounded in his chest. The weapon, humanity's secret weapon, was their only hope. They had one shot at turning the tide, and that shot had to be fired soon. But as the clock ticked, there was no sign of the weapon being ready. It was in the final stages of activation. But every passing second brought them closer to losing their world. "Stay focused," Alex said to his team, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We can't give up now. The weapon will be ready soon. We just need to hold them off long enough." His team nodded, their faces grim but determined. The Jartok warriors were closing in, their alien ships lighting up the sky with energy blasts. Buildings crumbled under the assault. The people who hadn't fled were now fighting back with whatever they had. Guns, makeshift weapons, and unbreakable willpower. Despite their courage, the resistance was outgunned and outmanned. The Jartok's technology was far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Alex and his team knew they had to use their greatest strength, strategy, and resilience. They set up traps, ambushes, and tried to slow the alien forces down as much as they could. The first wave of Jartok soldiers advanced with ease, confident that their enemies would fall before them, but they underestimated the human spirit. Resistance fighters fought fiercely, striking fast and disappearing into the shadows. But the aliens weren't fooled for long. They adapted quickly, hunting down the fighters with ruthless precision. "Where is it?" Alex muttered to himself, glancing at his watch. The countdown was ticking. The weapon had to be ready now, or all would be lost. Then, like a distant rumble, a voice crackled through Alex's earpiece. "Alex, it's ready. We need you to activate it manually." He didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." He motioned to his team. "Cover me. I'm going to activate the weapon." The group split, forming a protective circle around him as he made his way toward the hidden bunker where the weapon was stored. The city was in flames, and the air was thick with smoke. But Alex moved with purpose, dodging blasts and leaping over wreckage, his eyes fixed on the distant bunker. The Jartok had begun to catch up, their heavy footsteps thundering in the distance. But Alex pushed on, his mind focused only on the task at hand. Every step took him closer to the weapon that could save their world. He reached the bunker's entrance, a steel door that required a special code to open. His fingers flew over the keypad, entering the numbers as quickly as he could. The door clicked open, revealing a massive high-tech control room. Inside, the weapon humanity's last hope was powered up and ready to fire. Alex stepped forward and placed his hand on the activation panel. His heart raced as he confirmed the final code. The weapon would release a pulse so powerful that it could cripple the alien fleet in one shot. But there was a catch. The weapon was unstable. It could work perfectly, or it could tear apart everything around it. There was no way to know for sure. As he pressed the final button, the entire building shook. Outside, the alien ships hesitated. For a moment, as if sensing the change in the air. Then, without warning, the sky lit up with a massive surge of energy. The weapon had fired. The pulse shot through the sky, cutting through the alien fleet like a hot knife through butter. Ships exploded in a series of bright flashes, their once impenetrable armor nothing more than dust. The ground trembled, and the sound of destruction filled the air. The Jartok forces reeled, their ships falling from the sky like shattered glass. Alex's heart skipped a beat. It had worked. The weapon had succeeded. But as the dust settled, he realized that the battle wasn't over. The Jartok were down, but not out. They had more forces, more weapons. They had underestimated humanity once, and they wouldn't make that mistake again. "Prepare for Phase 2, Alex said into his communicator. "The fight's not over, but we've given them a reason to fear us." The weapon had done its job, but it was only the beginning of humanity's fight for survival. The Jartok had learned something important today. Messing with humans was a bad move, and they were about to learn. Why? The battle begins. The weapon's pulse had created a shockwave that rippled across the alien fleet, disabling their ships and scattering their forces. For a moment, the world stood still. The Jartok were stunned, their once uncheckable confidence shattered. But that moment of silence was fleeting. The aliens weren't ready to give up just yet. They regrouped quickly, rallying their remaining forces for a counterattack. Alex stood with his team on the edge of the city, watching the smoke rise from the wreckage of the Jartok ships. The weapon had worked, but the battle was far from over. Humanity had scored its first victory, but the enemy was not so easily defeated. "We've made a dent, but they're not done yet," Alex said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "They're going to come back stronger. We need to be ready." His team nodded, their faces grim but resolute. The resistance had prepared for this moment, but they had never imagined they would face an enemy with such raw power. The Jartok were relentless, and they would fight to the last. But Alex had a plan. He wasn't going to let humanity fall without giving it everything they had. In the distance, the sound of alien engines roared to life. The Jartok had launched their next assault, but this time they were coming in force. Dozens of ships, more heavily armed than before, descended from the sky, their guns aimed directly at the human resistance. "Everyone get to cover," Alex shouted, grabbing his rifle and sprinting for the nearest barricade. His team followed, quickly taking their positions and preparing for the next wave. The air was thick with tension as the ground shook with each passing second. The first wave of alien troops landed with terrifying precision. They were more organized now, with their ranks tightening and their weapons ready. Their armor was more advanced, their strategies more calculated. The Jartok had learned from their first mistake, and now they were playing for keeps. "Fire," Alex commanded as the first of the alien warriors charged forward. The sound of gunfire filled the air, but the aliens were relentless. They kept coming, their alien weapons firing blasts of energy that tore through the human defenses. Resistance fighters fell, but their comrades continued to push forward. Refusing to give up. Alex fired his rifle, taking down an alien soldier. In front of him, his aim was precise, his training paying off. But the Jartok were not easy to defeat. They had the firepower, the armor, and the numbers. The humans had their hearts, their ingenuity, and their determination. It was a battle of wills, and Alex wasn't about to lose. We need to slow them down, he shouted, rallying his team. Use the traps we set up. Fall back to the next line of defense. The resistance fighters scrambled into action, triggering traps that had been carefully placed throughout the city. Explosions ripped through the streets, sending alien soldiers flying. The humans had the advantage of knowing the terrain, but the Jartok were learning quickly. They adapted, sending in their more powerful units to counter the resistance's tactics. In the midst of the chaos, Alex saw something that sent a chill down his spine. The Jartok had deployed their heavy artillery, a massive, walking war machine that towered over the city, its guns mounted on every side. It was a behemoth, capable of leveling entire neighborhoods in seconds. Everyone, retreat to the backup position, Alex ordered, his voice firm. We can't take that thing head on. We need a plan. The resistance fighters fell back, regrouping at a secondary stronghold. But Alex knew they didn't have much time. The Jartok war machine was closing in, its weapons ready to unleash destruction. The humans had no choice but to fight back with everything they had. Prepare the EMP charges, Alex said, his mind racing. The EMP device was risky, but it was their best chance. If they could disable the war machine, they might have a chance to push the aliens back. One of the resistance fighters, a technician named Riley, stepped forward, holding the device. It's ready, but it's a one-time shot. If we miss, we're done for. Alex nodded. We don't miss. As the war machine drew closer, the resistance fighters took their positions, ready for the final confrontation. The EMP charge was set, the countdown ticking in Alex's mind. The alien machine's heavy footsteps echoed through the streets, each step bringing it closer to the heart of the city. Now, Alex shouted. Riley activated the EMP charge, sending a pulse of energy toward the war machine. The machine shuddered, its systems flickering. For a moment, it seemed like the EMP hadn't worked. But then, with a violent explosion of sparks, the war machine collapsed to the ground, its weapons falling silent. The human forces cheered, but Alex knew they couldn't afford to celebrate yet. Keep pushing forward, Alex yelled, rallying his team. The fight isn't over. The battle raged on, but humanity had just gained a significant victory. The Jartok had underestimated the humans once again. They had believed the Earth would fall without a fight. But now, the aliens had learned that they were facing an enemy who wouldn't back down no matter the odds. The battle was far from over, but Alex and his team had proven one thing. They were not going to let Earth fall without a fight. And as long as they had breath in their lungs, they would keep pushing back, one victory at a time. The tide turns. The war machine lay in a crumpled heap, its massive frame twisted from the force of the EMP blast. The human resistance had struck a major blow against the Jartok invaders, but the battle was far from over. The Jartok, while momentarily stunned, quickly regrouped, and their retaliation came swiftly. As the dust settled and the last echoes of the explosion faded, Alex surveyed the battlefield. He knew they had won a small victory, but he wasn't naive enough to believe the tide had truly turned. Not yet. The sky was filled with the screeching of alien ships as they soared overhead, dropping more troops into the streets. It was clear, now that the Jartok had a limitless supply of reinforcements. As the resistance fighters regrouped, they faced a new threat, an army that seemed to never stop coming. "They're just going to keep coming," Riley, the technician, muttered, looking up at the ships. "They don't know when to quit." "We can't either," Alex replied, his voice hard. "This is our world. We can't let them take it." With the war machine disabled, the Jartok had been thrown off balance, but they still had a massive advantage in terms of numbers and technology. The resistance, while well-trained and fiercely determined, was vastly outgunned. Alex knew that they could not rely on brute force alone to win this war. They needed to outsmart the aliens, outmaneuver them. But how? Suddenly, a voice crackled over the communicator. "Alex, this is Harper. We've found something." Harper was one of the Resistance's scouts, and she sounded urgent. "What is it?" Alex asked, his heart picking up pace. "It's a supply depot," Harper replied. "We've located one of their main supply lines. If we can take it out, we could cripple their ability to keep bringing in reinforcements. We could slow them down, maybe even stop them." Alex paused, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. This could be the break they needed, but it was risky. The depot was heavily guarded, and the Jartok weren't known for leaving their resources undefended. But the more Alex thought about it, the more he realized that this might be their only chance to turn the tide. They had to act now. "All right, Harper, you've got your orders. We hit that depot hard. Everyone else, cover the retreat. We'll need all the firepower we can get." The human resistance had learned one valuable lesson. They couldn't defeat the Jartok head-on, but they had their own form of warfare: guerrilla tactics, surprise strikes, and the ability to adapt on the fly. They would use the aliens' overconfidence against them. Alex gathered his team, explaining the plan quickly but clearly. They would hit the supply depot at night, when the aliens would be less prepared. It was a suicide mission, but it was their best shot. They couldn't let the Jartok gain any more ground. As night fell, the city became a war zone. The distant hum of alien engines filled the air as Jartok forces moved about the streets. But in the shadows, Alex and his team were preparing for their strike. They knew the risks. They knew that not all of them would make it back. But they also knew that they couldn't let the Jartok continue their invasion without a fight. Under the cover of darkness, they made their way to the depot, moving swiftly and silently. They set up explosives, prepared traps, and positioned themselves for the attack. The Jartok forces, unaware of the impending danger, were still complacent, believing the humans would not dare strike so deep behind enemy lines. Alex signaled his team. "On my mark, wait for it." The tension was unbearable as they waited. Then, with a deep breath, Alex gave the signal. Now, explosions ripped through the night, sending shockwaves through the depot. The Jartok soldiers were caught off guard, scrambling to respond. But the humans were already in motion, taking out enemy troops with quick, precise strikes. The resistance fighters worked in perfect coordination, planting more explosives and sabotaging the Jartok's weapons and supply caches. The air was thick with smoke and the sound of battle. But Alex and his team didn't hesitate. Every move was calculated, every step planned. They had trained for this moment, and now they were making it count. But just as they thought they had gained the upper hand, a new threat appeared. From the shadows emerged a squad of Jartok elite soldiers that had been specially trained to deal with human resistance. These soldiers were faster, stronger, and more ruthless than any the humans had faced before. "Fall back," Alex shouted, as the elite soldiers advanced, their weapons charged and ready to fire. The battle had shifted in an instant, and the human resistance was forced to retreat. The depot was in flames, but the cost had been high. Many of Alex's team had fallen, and even though the supply line had been severed, the Jartok were far from finished. They would rebuild, regroup, and come after them harder than ever. But as Alex limped back with the remnants of his team, there was a spark of hope in his heart. The Jartok were not invincible. They could bleed, and the humans had just proven that, against all odds, they could win. The battle wasn't over. But for the first time, the Jartok were beginning to realize that Earth was not the easy conquest they had believed it would be. Humanity had fought back, and now the aliens had to deal with the consequences. The tide had started to turn. The hidden truth: the night after the raid on the Jartok supply depot, the human resistance fighters gathered around their makeshift campfire, their faces smeared with dirt and exhaustion. They had won a small victory, but the cost had been high. Many of their comrades were either dead or wounded. Yet, despite the losses, there was a spark of something that had been missing for so long: hope. For the first time in weeks, the humans felt like they might actually have a chance to win this war. Alex sat quietly by the fire, his mind racing as he stared into the flickering flames. He had seen the destruction caused by the Jartok forces, and he knew the fight wasn't over. In fact, it was far from it. The Jartok would regroup, they would retaliate, and they would come after them harder than ever before. But that didn't matter right now. What mattered was that they had taken something important away from the aliens: their sense of invincibility. "Alex," a voice called from behind him. It was Harper, the scout who would help find the supply depot. She was holding a small datapad, her face pale. "You need to see this." Alex looked up, his brow furrowing. Harper had never looked so serious. "What is it?" he asked, standing to his feet. Harper handed him the pad. On it, there was a detailed map of the Jartok fleet, but that wasn't what caught Alex's attention. It was the text on the screen, written in Jartok code. Harper had decrypted it, but even then, it took a moment for Alex to fully understand. The implications of what he was seeing is this: a message from their leader. Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Harper nodded. "It's more than that. It's a confession. The Jartok didn't just come to Earth for resources or to conquer us. They came here because their own world is dying." Alex's heart skipped a beat. The thought of the Jartok being vulnerable was almost impossible to believe. "What do you mean, their world is dying?" Harper pointed to a portion of the message. "The Jartok homeworld is on the brink of collapse. They've been at war for centuries with other alien races, and their resources are nearly depleted. Earth is their last chance. If they can take it, they can rebuild. If they fail, they'll be finished." Alex sat down slowly, processing the information. The Jartok, the invincible conquerors of the galaxy, were desperate. They weren't just invaders, they were refugees, trying to survive. It didn't excuse the devastation they had caused, but it painted a different picture of their motivations. "Knew there was something more to this," Alex muttered, his mind racing. "But we can't let them take our world. We can't just let them use us as their last hope." Harper's eyes narrowed. "There's more. They've been searching for something on Earth, something that could turn the tide in their favor. According to the data, they believe there's a power here, something hidden, that could give them the strength they need to defeat any resistance. Alex stood up, his fists clenched. What is it? What are they looking for? Harper hesitated for a moment before answering. They're searching for ... us. Specifically, they believe there's something special about humans. Something in our biology that could give them the power to save their dying race. They think we have abilities they don't understand. They want to experiment on us. Alex's blood ran cold. The Jartok had already done enough damage. They had destroyed cities, killed thousands, and forced the human race into hiding. But this was beyond anything Alex had imagined. They were hunting humanity down like lab rats, searching for some kind of genetic advantage. We can't let them find out what they're looking for, Alex said, his voice hard with resolve. We need to find this power before they do. Harper nodded. We don't know what it is, but it's the key to ending this war. If we can figure out what they want and get to it first, we might be able to turn the tide. Alex clenched his fists, determination filling his chest. We'll find it. We'll stop them from using us. But we need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more likely they are to find it before we do. As the night grew darker and the stars above blinked out one by one, Alex and his team made their plan. They had a new goal now, not just to survive, but to beat the Jartok at their own game. They would find the power the Jartok were seeking and make sure it stayed out of their hands. But, deep down, Alex knew that this was just the beginning. The Jartok weren't just enemies, they were desperate. And that made them even more dangerous. But Alex wasn't about to back down. Not now, not ever. The battle for Earth had taken a new turn. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about finding the truth. And the truth could either save them or destroy them. The final stand, the days following their discovery of the Jartok's true motive, were filled with tension. The humans had a new mission, to find whatever it was the Jartok sought, the key to their survival. Alex and his team couldn't afford to waste any more time. Every second brought the Jartok closer to their goal, and every moment of hesitation was a risk they couldn't take. Alex stood at the front of the resistance base, looking out over the city. The once bustling streets were now empty, filled with debris and wreckage from the alien assault. It felt like a lifetime ago when the city was alive with the sound of everyday life. Now it was a war zone, with every building a potential target and every corner a hiding place for the Jartok forces. We need to move fast, Alex said, turning to his team. The Jartok are closer than ever to finding what they're looking for. We can't let them take it. Harper, who had become Alex's most trusted ally, stepped forward. We've narrowed it down. The Jartok are searching for something near the old military base outside the city. It's the last place they haven't hit yet, Alex nodded. Then that's where we'll go. It's our best shot. The plan was risky, but it was the only one they had. The military base had been abandoned years ago, but Alex and his team knew it would still be heavily guarded by alien forces. They couldn't afford to let the Jartok take control of it, not when they knew it might hold the secret to humanity's future. The night before the mission, the resistance fighters gathered for a final briefing. They had come together from all walks of life, doctors, soldiers, farmers, and engineers. But now they were all united by one goal: to protect their world. Alex looked around at the faces of his team, each of them wary but filled with a quiet determination. We're fighting for more than just survival, Alex said, his voice carrying the weight of their struggle. We're fighting for the future of our people, our children, and every life that hasn't been destroyed yet. This mission isn't just about stopping the Jartok, it's about showing them that we're not afraid. We will not bow down. We will fight until the end. The team nodded, their eyes steely with resolve. As the night grew darker, they moved out under the cover of darkness. The air was thick with tension as they navigated the ruins of the city, making their way toward the military base. The forces, though distracted by their search for the mysterious power, were still patrolling the area. Their ships flew overhead, casting long shadows across the ground. Alex led the team through a narrow alleyway, keeping close to the walls. They couldn't afford to be seen. Every step felt like it could be their last, but they pressed on. The thought of the Jartok using their power to dominate the planet was more than enough to fuel their determination. When they reached the military base, Alex gave a signal. The team split up into two groups, one to breach the gates, the other to create a diversion. They moved swiftly and silently, taking out any alien sentries that stood in their way. The base itself was a maze of concrete walls and abandoned buildings. Alex knew the Jartok would have set up some kind of defense perimeter around the area they were searching. They had to act quickly. As they reached the central control room of the base, Alex's heart pounded in his chest. This was at the place where the Jartok believed they would find what they needed to win the war. But Alex had no intention of letting that happen. He entered the control room with Harper and Riley close behind. The room was eerily quiet, but Alex could feel the presence of the alien forces just beyond the door. They didn't know the humans had infiltrated the base yet, but it wouldn't be long before they discovered them. "Let's set the charges," Alex whispered, his voice low and steady. "We'll blow this place to hell and make sure the Jartok can't find whatever they're looking for." As Harper worked to plant explosives around the room, Alex moved toward the central computer terminal. His hands shook slightly as he typed in commands, trying to access the files that the Jartok were after. But the system was encrypted far more secure than anything the humans had ever encountered. "Come on," Alex muttered under his breath, frantically typing. He had to get the information. He had to know what the Jartok were looking for. If he didn't, everything they had fought for would be in vain. Suddenly, the door to the control room slammed open, and a group of Jartok soldiers stormed in, their weapons raised. Alex's heart raced as the aliens spotted him. They knew the humans were here now, but it was too late. Harper hit the final button, and the room erupted with a deafening roar as the explosives detonated, sending shockwaves through the base. The Jartok soldiers were thrown back, their bodies crashing into the walls. The building shook as the power went out, and the entire facility began to collapse around them. "Let's go," Alex shouted, grabbing Harper and Riley. They turned and sprinted down the hall, the sound of collapsing debris echoing behind them. As they ran for their lives, the Jartok forces regrouped, but it was too late. The base was destroyed, and with it, the chance for the Jartok to find whatever they had been searching for. The humans had won another battle, but as Alex and his team emerged from the wreckage, they knew this war was far from over. The Jartok would not give up easily, and there was still much more to discover. But for the first time, Alex felt a real sense of victory. The Jartok had underestimated them again. The final stand was just beginning, and this time, humanity was ready for whatever the Jartok threw at them. Victory or defeat. The dust from the destroyed military base settled into the night air, and the silence that followed was deafening. The team, bruised and battered from their escape, gathered in a secluded area away from the wreckage. Despite the enormous risk they had just taken, there was a sense of grim satisfaction among them. The mission was a success, at least for now. Alex surveyed his team, his eyes landing on each of their faces. They were tired, their bodies covered in dirt and sweat, but their resolve had never been stronger. They had struck a major blow against the Jartok, preventing them from obtaining the power they had been seeking. But Alex knew this victory could be short-lived. The war wasn't over, and the Jartok were relentless. "We've done it," Harper said, her voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "We've stopped them from getting what they wanted. But it's not over. They'll be back." Alex nodded, his mind racing as he thought about the next steps. "We can't stop now. We need to keep pushing. They're not just going to give up because we hit one base. We have to stay ahead of them. We need to find out exactly what they were after." Riley, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "Alex, what if what they were looking for was us, our biology? What if the power they were after was hidden inside humans all along?" The thought sent a chill down Alex's spine. The Jartok had been searching for something that could give them an advantage in their war, and it seemed plausible that it could be connected to humanity itself. But if that was true, then the stakes had just gotten much higher. "Maybe," Alex said, his voice low, "but we don't know enough yet. We need to find out what they were really after, and we need to do it fast. The Jartok won't stop until they get what they came for." The team sat in silence, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on their shoulders. Despite their success, the war was far from over. The Jartok were more powerful, more advanced, and more desperate than ever before. They had learned something valuable about humanity's strength, but Alex knew that the alien forces would not rest until they had destroyed every last human resistance fighter. But there was one thing that Jartok didn't know. Humans were not so easily defeated. As the hours passed, Alex and his team began to plan their next move. They knew they needed more information. They needed to understand what the Jartok were after and why they were willing to go to such extreme lengths to obtain it. But they also knew they couldn't just keep running. At some point, they would have to take the fight directly to the Jartok. They couldn't hide forever. "Alex," Riley spoke again, interrupting his thoughts. "What if the answer isn't just about fighting? What if we can turn the tide with what we already have? We have something the Jartok can't comprehend: our unity, our adaptability, and our resilience. We might be able to use that to our advantage." Alex looked at Riley, his mind processing the idea. "You're right," he said slowly. "We've been playing their game, trying to beat them at their own war. But maybe it's time we change the rules." The Resistance had always fought on the defensive, reacting to the Jartek's attacks. But now, Alex realized, it was time for a change in strategy. The humans had something the Jartok couldn't replicate: their unyielding will to survive, to adapt, and to overcome. They had to use that to their advantage, not just in battle, but in every move they made. "We need to find their weakness," Alex said with renewed determination. "And when we do, we'll hit them where it hurts. This isn't just about surviving anymore. This is about taking the fight to them. We'll show the Jartok why messing with humans was the worst mistake they ever made." Harper nodded. "We can do this, together." With a plan in place, Alex's team moved forward with a new sense of purpose. The Jartok had thought they were invincible. They had underestimated humanity, believing that their advanced technology and overwhelming power would be enough to crush Earth and its inhabitants. But the Jartok had learned the hard way that humans were not so easily defeated as they gathered. their resources, and prepared for the next phase of their mission. Alex couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. They had fought through insurmountable odds, and they had won. The Jartok might have the power, but humanity had something far more dangerous: the will to fight. "Let's finish this," Alex said, his voice resolute. "For Earth, for our people, and for every human who believes we can win." The final battle was still ahead of them. But Alex knew one thing for sure: humanity had already proven that it was capable of achieving the impossible. And the Jartak had no idea what was coming next. The war was far from over, but the first victory belonged to humanity, and Alex was ready to lead them into the next phase, whatever it took. The fight for Earth had just begun.